Hi, Kevin Furman here with the this week's installment of the E3LC Book of the Month Club. We're doing Secrets for Getting Things Done by Vincent Harris. Here's the cover version I've got. And it's a short book of strategies to taking yourself to get to the next level of productivity. So I'm just going to run through the 8 that we're going to run through tonight. We're in the second week here. So I'm going to do strategies 9 through 16. And we're in the series. We're in the E3LC series, which is 3 E's. There are effective with people, efficient with things, and encouraging with myself. We happen to be in the efficient with things portion, highlighting that with books and discussing. So, we'll be doing other ones, right? So this is actually the second month of this, and then we're going to be moving into encouraging with myself for the next couple of months with the next 2 books. So anyway, sorry. So what we're going to do is just jump right in, and if you have questions, get a hold of me, please. kfurman@e3lc.net. Leave me a comment here and let me know if you've got suggestions for other books or ideas or something that really was helpful. All right, so we're going to jump in. Strategy number 9. So strategy number 9 is just named declutter. And declutter, it's kind of pretty obvious what he's talking about. He's talking about just your physical space. Declutter it, right? So you get a clear mind. So when you sit down at your desk or wherever you work, you're not distracted by things that weren't quite done yet, or, oh yeah, I got to handle that later, or, come up with a system. There are a lot of ways to do that, and lots of books talk about that. So I'm not going to go heavy into it. He just wants to highlight the idea of just decluttering. And I think that it would apply. I don't know, he didn't really get into this, but I think it applies to a couple other areas too. One is your computer, right? Having extra stuff just strewn about in your computer actually is harder for it to keep track of everything and makes your computer run less efficiency. It's not horrible, but depending on the size of your files and how you do it, it can get messy, if you will. So, like go through and try to categorize things and put things in folders, and, so you can find things. One, you can find them faster. And 2, when you go there, it has this appearance of having a system, right? And having a system with things really does help your brain keep things moving forward. So that's kind of his main point, is just get a system, simple or not, whatever, and declutter your space so you're able to think more clearly. So that's his main thing on that one. Strategy number 10 is the 90-day rule for creating change-resistant habits. So he kind of gets into a little bit of like the whole idea of habits, and there's a great book we're going to probably look at next go around on when we get back to this topic of being efficient with things, but could also be encouraging with myself. I don't know yet, but there's a really good book about habits we're going to get into. But he points at a similar thing in this really quick chapter, and that is a lot of people will try to do too many habits all at once. Just, I'm going to change everything about me. I don't like anything at all, and I got to change it all. That rarely works. In his experience, in my experience with myself and watching others, that usually doesn't work at all. You usually end up doing none of them. You usually just kind of give up, get overwhelmed, or you just like, oh, what's the point? It gets futile. You're just like, I can't make any headway with anything, so forget it. I'll just, whatever, I'm me, and whatever. Okay, well, neither of those 2 scenarios really work all that great, being overwhelmed or not doing anything. So his point is this. He says, think about it in terms of like quarters of a year, right? So you have 12 months, quarters are 3 months, that's 90 days. And that's what he's getting at. Excuse me. He says, just take one habit for 90 days, focus on creating that habit, right? There may be 3 other things you realize that you want to work on. And okay, great. Then put those aside for the 90 days, right? And really focus on that one habit, get that one habit really happening, and then move on to the next one, right? And do that for 90 days and then do the next one. That's 4 per year, 4 habits. Now, he's not talking about necessarily, tying your shoes a different way. He's talking about changing a habit of your behavior, right? Something that's going to make a big difference in your productivity. So creating a habit of reviewing business items each day as opposed to each week, or I don't know. That's just a silly example. I'm just saying something that's actively going to move your life or your business or whatever for your family, whatever, forward, right? And focus on a habit that's going to help that move forward. That's really what he's looking for. But his whole thing is really just do one at a time. Don't try to do 4 habits, even 2. Just focus on one, right? Do the best you can with the other stuff. You're probably going to fail on a few things, whatever, but that one thing, right? 90 days, do it. So that's his big thing. And I haven't, I can't say that I've done that consistently. No, I haven't done that consistent, like 1 habit at a time for 90 days, no matter what. I don't think I've done that very consistently throughout my life, but I certainly have recreated habits or created new habits. And I certainly have a few. I still need to, keep checking off the stuff at this point, even. I really do. So, okay, great. So instead of a whole bunch, right, pick one and go for it. And, yeah, it's good advice for a lot of things, right? You can only, uh, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, right? We kind of usually think of it as like a single step, like you take one step but you keep going, but it's a single step. It's not a leap, it's not 80 steps, it's a single. You just do one thing at a time. You take a step and you take the next step, you take the next step, and that's what a habit does. When you create a habit, you do it once and you do it again, and then one more time, and then one more time, one more time. It's not 40,000 at once, it's one time enough times, and then it gets created. Okay, enough on that. That's not, you get it. All right, so strategy number 11 is create a stress and worry chair. Okay, so he gives a little story about a guy who's really nervous about talking, and a psychiatrist told him, all right, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get, when you're going to go do a speech, I want you to get as nervous as you possibly can. Like really, really, if you get sweaty, like I want you to sweat like crazy before you go on and do your speech. And this guy's like, okay, that's nuts. And he did, he agreed like to try an experiment because he was having so much bad luck with it. And he said, okay, okay, that's right. So he tried it. He came back, told the doctor, it's like, what was weird is I couldn't do it. I couldn't actually get myself more nervous. I couldn't get like really built up. He said, okay, girl, how'd the speech go? He goes, it actually went okay. It was pretty good. It wasn't a home run or whatever, but he said, I wasn't crazy nervous. I didn't sweat. I just kind of gave the speech. And so it worked in that sense, right? So instead of avoiding the feelings that you're feeling anxious about, one of the things that's really smart is acknowledge them. And that's what the doctor did in a different way, is just acknowledge what you are feeling. Figure out, like, where's that coming from, right? And he's going to talk about that in a chapter in a strategy coming up pretty quick, but just instead of fighting it so much, acknowledge that it's there, it's normal, and then picture, instead of like how bad that is, picture what you want, right? If that's not what you want, what do you want? Right? Picture something else. And he didn't say this in his chapter, but I'm just going to add this in my own little deal here. Picture what you really want, right? If you picture, and I was telling this to a whole bunch of people recently, that if you picture what you don't want, and you say, you're telling the universe, let's say, or God, or, whatever your faith is, and it doesn't matter, like, supreme being, universe, God. I'm just going to use God. That's my example. Okay, so when I say, God, I don't want to be poor. Okay, well, it leaves it up to a lot of interpretation. And I'm not saying God's looking to trick you or anything, but it's, and taking it away from God for a second, it's sort of like asking the genie, right? You get the genie in the bottle, you get 3 wishes, you wish for $1 million, but there's always strings attached to it because the genie has room, right? You didn't tell him enough detail or what you actually did want, like, specifically, that he can add a lot of detail to it, right? So if you start talking about what you don't want, that leaves a ton of room for possibilities of other things that you don't want, right? That one part of it you don't want, but there's all this other that could be added to it, right? So if you say, no, I want this, and you're very, very specific, the universe will align more with what you want, or God will listen to what you want. Now, he may not grant it and all that stuff. We're not going to get into that, but you're more likely to get there if you focus on what you want. Now, to get it away from the wishing and the prayers and all that, but if you just think about your focus, right? I don't want blah, blah, blah. Well, that leaves all kinds of possibilities of what it could be. But if you say, no, I want that, well, then that's where you're going, right? It's a very specific point. Um, so this whole thing was create a stress and worry chair is like, okay, if you're going to be stressed and worried, just get a chair. That's all it's for. When you want to, like you're freaking out, go sit in the chair and freak out as much as you need to. Get it out of your system in a way, right? And really think about, okay, then like, okay, what is this getting me? It's not really getting me to my goal. Okay, I think I'm good now, and you go back to taking care of business. So in a very loose way, that's what he was talking about. Strategy number 12 is be a note sender and a gift giver, right? So, man, this is good. It's a good one for me. I need to get better at this. This is a habit I have not created. I do it sporadically, and I need to do it regularly, very regularly, and I need to come up with a plan. So, one of the things I'll be working on over the next few months is this. So when somebody does something nice, or just you just think of someone, right? They don't have to do anything nice for you or do anything for you. You just think of them, right? Someone from your past, a friend, somebody you hadn't seen in a while, whatever. You just send them a note. Now, on a side note of this note thing is, and he may have said it, I've forgotten, sorry. Writing the note, actually writing it out is way more impactful than an email or a text or an Instagram post or whatever, right? Um, Written out things are very uncommon these days. So when you do them, they have more weight. They have more impact. They mean more to people because it takes time. It takes more time to do that. And the whole gift giver thing. Oh man, I was reading I was actually reading a different book about being a gift giver, and that's a big one for some people. I'll put it that way. For some people, receiving a gift shows great love and affection for someone, and I don't mean that romantically. I mean just as a friend or a cohort or whatever. Like a gift, even if it's a small, it doesn't have to be like grandiose, $40,000 whatever. Like just a pen or some sticky notes. You're like, oh, I noticed you ran out. Here you go. Silly examples. Again, I'm kind of being extreme, but it doesn't have to be crazy, right? It just needs to be a gift, something you thought that they would like. That speaks volumes to certain people. Now, to others, it doesn't speak as much, but I think giving a gift isn't necessarily ever going to put someone off, right? You're never going to be offended unless you're being a goofball. But if you're really giving them a gift that you think they will want, no one's going to be put off by that. There are some people that will enjoy that even more. They'll get more meaning out of it. But everyone likes getting a gift, right? Pretty much. So it's always a good bet. It's always a good way to foster the relationship. So good strategy. All right, number 13, review your day each evening. Yeah, ooh, boy, this is a good one. This is a good one. And it's really self-explanatory, right? You take some time every day, you sit down, and there's different ways to do it. You sit down, you just take a few minutes, 5 to 30 minutes, I think is a good range, depending on your days, what you're trying to get accomplished in the day, how much you need to adjust for the next day, right? So I tend to do around 10 to 15. I try to, and I can't say I'm 100% every day do it, but I'm pretty consistent. So it's just been really helpful to stop. And I recently have gotten back into the idea of journaling. That's another part of this is instead of just thinking, right? Just like, okay, I should have said this or that went really well, which is something we'll talk about more in the next couple of books. But I think just journaling or writing about it, writing down notes somewhere that you keep in a the same place or whatever. Just even if it's just to say this is what happened, right? And that was good because XYZ, or that happened, didn't work out well. Here's what I'm going to do instead. When that comes up again, I'm going to approach it this way because the way I did it today didn't work. Or new ideas. You think, wow, man, I don't have anything. This is what happened. What's next, right? And so you just let yourself brainstorm for a few minutes. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process and drama-filled whatever. It's just like I had this thought. This is interesting. Maybe I'll forward that later, right? Or I'm going to try this tomorrow and see what happens. Whatever. You might have an insight on talking to somebody. You had a rough conversation, and then at the end of the day, you kind of think back and you go, yeah, I sort of blew it there. Maybe I could try this. So then you have a new approach for the next day. Or you decide, man, I'm really stuck. I need some help. I need somebody to talk to me about this. finding a coach, etc. All right. So, review the day could look in different ways, but I think being consistent about it is going to help you stay more focused on what's important each day, which is a whole nother point. But just review it, like really go through it and just take stock. Like, man, I did not do well today, or man, this was a stellar day. I knocked it out of the park all day long, right? Whatever, everything in between. So it's worth doing, it's worth saying, and I'm glad he put it in the book because it's just it's pretty straight ahead, but man, it's good. Especially if you spend some time just thinking about the future, right? During that time, spend a few minutes just thinking about how do you want the future to look. That whole thing of what is it you really want? That's the question, right? And that's time where you can think, did today serve what I really want, or did I get off track? And if I got off track, how'd that happen, right? So other things to think about during that time. Great. All right, strategy 14, do at least one thing each day out of your comfort zone. Okay, now this chapter, I'm gonna have to say, Vincent, I'm not sure. I'm not sure you spoke to the chapter, even though it was around the chapter. You kind of got on this huge tangent, and he was talking about being uncomfortable. And his main point, I think, the first point he makes in the chapter is that everything you know how to do now was uncomfortable when you first did it. Now, some things you do them once and you're good, right? Some things they take a lot of time to get comfortable with them. But at some point, you keep doing it enough, it's not uncomfortable anymore. And so his kind of one of the things he's trying to say is well, find things to learn, like grow, find a new thing to try. That was one of the things he was going in. And then he gets on this thing like being scared to try things new, I think is where he's going. This is one of the longer chapters in this book. He spent quite a few pages actually talking about how do you get out of that fear of doing something uncomfortable or getting, like, oh, I don't want to do it, or no, it's not my thing, or just whatever, like avoiding it. And he starts talking about okay, well, ask yourself, you don't want to do it. Okay, great. Well, what do you feel about that? And I feel like, I feel just anxious about it. I just don't. It's like, it feels, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, great. And his whole point is, if you dig a little bit and you use the word, well, how do you feel about that? And he's made a big thing about. Well, how do you feel about that you're anxious? And then you start okay, well, what? You start to uncover the thinking behind all of it, as opposed to just the emotional reaction and then staying there. You start to think about well, what does that mean? And you kind of go, and you can even go a step back further, right? You get to a certain point. He talks about actually shifting energy in there, which is interesting terminology. It's what I do in coaching a lot. And so he uses that word, what do you think about that? Or how do you feel about that? Well, I think I'm human because it makes sense that I'd be anxious. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's probably true. And he does some acknowledging, right? Validates what they're saying, which is super smart. And then, and you're like, well, what do you think about that? Right? That it's human. Well, I guess I don't be that anxious about it. It's just, again, you can get yourself to the right place of thinking and reframing that. You lose those emotions because you've thought about it a new way, and you're like, oh, I guess I could do this. It makes sense that I would feel that way, but I don't need to. So you have another choice in the matter. So interesting. He just gives an example of he kind of used the idea of shifting, and I use that language also. So he didn't talk a lot about do these things to get out of your comfort zone. He talks more about how to get yourself mentally prepared to do it. So not a bad thing, but it wasn't really the chapter title. But yeah, that's cool. I mean, in a way, if you didn't do all that, do something uncomfortable is a pretty short chapter, right? So, it kind of delves further into the more of a psychology thing. It's not really psychology, but just, another way to think about it. So it gets you out of that nervous, you're kind of stuck in that energy, and you can well, if you think about it a different way, you can choose to be different about it. Okay, anyway, enough of that. Strategy number 15, adopt the quote, if I'm on time, I'm late philosophy. Again, very self-explanatory. So if you are supposed to be somewhere at 8 a.m. and you show up at 8, you're probably not going to be ready to do whatever it is you're supposed to do at 8 when you walk in the door. Most likely that's the case, right? Almost nothing happens like that. So that's what he's talking about. Don't show up at the time you're supposed to be ready. You show up before that time to prepare so you can start at the time you are supposed to be ready. In the music world, that is king in a lot of places, right? So for performers, it depends on the situation. There's some places like cover bands and bars. They notoriously do not start on time. I'm not a big fan. Like if you're supposed to start at 8, start at 8, right? I mean, whatever. Big bands, meaning like big groups that are you're in a stadium full of 60,000 people or whatever, like huge. They're also notoriously like an hour late, 2 hours late, whatever. I'm not sure what's going on there, but you know, if you're that important, I guess you can do what you want. I am not in that position. I don't really want to be in that position necessarily. It would be fun, but I'm not interested in that lifestyle per se. Um, sorry. But I want to live in a world where we respect each other's time, and it's really about that. It's about respecting another person's time, your time, and in our culture for sure, time is very valuable. And so if you're wasting anyone else's time, you're kind of wasting them, and you're kind of putting a strain on the relationship. Don't want to do that. Be ahead, right? Leave earlier than you think. If you got to drive for half an hour, leave 45 minutes early, right? Or leave an hour early if you're really nervous about traffic or construction or whatever's going on. Now you can't foresee all problems, but you can do better than just it's 30-minute drive. I'll leave 30 minutes ahead of time. Well, that's going to make you probably late, right? So you got to leave time in there for things to go a little wrong, so to speak, get in your way, some breakdowns, whatever, and then you can be ready to go at the time you're supposed to be ready to go. That's pretty much it, right? That's it in the philosophy. It's pretty simple, nothing complicated, but it's really easy to fall in that trap of like trying to fit too many things in, like I try to do. So you got to account for that, the prep time, right? And that's something that I'll probably always work on. Generally pretty good at it, but I'll probably always have to work on that. Strategy number 16, the last one for the evening: box yourself in for success. So his whole thing on this one is so you're trying to get something done, right? You've got tasks you need to do on a daily basis. This is kind of the main example he's trying to get. Like, I need to do this thing every day. Okay, great. And if it's business, like Monday through Friday, I do this, or Monday through Saturday, or you're the business owner every day of every waking hour. Yeah, just kidding. So whatever it is, right? So the days that you need to do it, you make this grid, right? You made a string of boxes, and you can make a grid of like, if it's say Monday through Friday, maybe a 5x5 grid, right? You want to track 5 weeks of something, or 4x5, like a month, whatever, right? You get to pick whatever that is, but do that, make a grid, and every day that you actually do the thing, cross out a box, right? You cross out a box, and then the next day that you do it, you cross out another box. And if you get to the end of the day and you didn't cross out that box, your brain starts to tell you like, oh man, I broke the string, right? And especially if you have a whole bunch in a row, you don't want to break it because you see all this, colored in boxes, and then there's this white spot, like, oh, that hurts, right? So that's sort of the psychology of what he's trying to say is like, give yourself a physical representation of doing what it is you're supposed to be doing so that you can see it. You can be honest with yourself about what you're actually doing and not what you think you're doing. Goes along the line with review the day, right? So it goes along with that one, kind of goes hand in hand with that one. But it gives you more of a physical representation of things you're trying to get accomplished, and you either did or you didn't. And you can be honest at the end of a period of time, a month, whatever, and go, okay, how many days did I actually do it? And if it's, you see all these holes, okay, I got to up my game there. That's why I'm struggling here. No question, right? And then when you get it all filled in and you're doing that consistently, then you can start looking at, okay, how do I improve my productivity from there? But you start there. You start with being consistent. And that's, ooh, boy, that consistency thing. I'm talking to myself at the moment. I'm thinking of an area that I need to be more consistent with. But that is a thing, man. That is a powerful, powerful thing, is consistency. And he's just trying to give you a physical and visual representation of being consistent, which is, nothing wrong with that. So there you go. That is 9 through 16 strategies and secrets for getting things done by Vincent Harris. So thanks for checking it out. If you have any comments, great. Leave me a comment. Again, my email, kfurman@e3lc.net. And I'll see you next time. Take care.